Freeman's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. In a video posted on May 28, 2022, Corporal Michael Pritch of the Little Egg Harbor Police Department in Ocean County, New Jersey, stopped his vehicle and approached a young man who was walking on the side of the road after the man, who we will refer to as Mr. Walker, gave the finger to Corporal Pritch. The interaction was captured on Corporal Pritch's body-worn camera.
Why you giving me the finger?
What?
What's your problem?
What?
Why you giving me the finger?
I'm walking away.
Huh?
Am I free to go?
You ever see something that just burns you up inside? Because we all knew this was happening, but seeing it play out in broad daylight hits different. A teenage kid walking down a public street does what every frustrated American has wanted to do 1,000 times. He flips off a cop from the curb. We aren't talking about a riot. We aren't talking about violence. Just a gesture of pure, raw First Amendment disdain. And what happens next should terrify every parent listening right now. You know, just like I know, that this wasn't about law and order. This was about bruised ego and the demonic need some people in uniform have to crush a young man's spirit simply because they can. The files on this one come straight from the body-worn camera of Corporal Michael Pritch of the Little Egg Harbor Police Department in New Jersey. And when the camera rolls, you see the mask slip immediately. The officer whips his car around.
Why you giving me the finger?
Am I free to go?
No. Come
For
here.
what reason?
Why you giving me the finger? What's your problem?
Am I free to go?
No.
What, do you have a problem?
No.
Do you have a problem?
No.
If you don't have a problem, then I can leave.
Why you giving me the finger when you're walking? Huh? Come here. Get over here.
What?
Get over here.
Is that a lawful order?
Yeah.
For what reason?
Because you're giving me the finger.
That's legal.
No, it isn't.
Says who?
Says it all.
Pull up the law.
But here is the beautiful part. The kid doesn't fold. He demands the statute. He demands the legal reason for the stop. And this is where our unlikely hero emerges from the smoke. Because this teenager knows the Constitution better than the men with the badges. The officer barks an order to stop. But the boy knows his Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable seizure don't vanish just because a cop gets his feelings hurt. So he keeps walking while demanding to know if the order is lawful. This is the moment the establishment loses its mind. A teenager schooling a veteran officer on the difference between a lawful command and a tantrum, forcing the officer to physically grab him.
14th Amendments make the simple public display here involved this single four-letter expletive a criminal offense. Likewise, as the Supreme Court explained in the 1989 case of Texas versus Johnson, while, quote, the First Amendment literally forbids the abridgment only of speech, its protection does not end at the spoken or written word. Conduct may be sufficiently imbued with elements of communication to fall within the scope of the First and 14th Amendments. The court also...
And then comes the part they don't want you to know. Because the moment the physical detention begins and the kid starts screaming for help, Corporal Pritch reaches down and turns off his body-worn camera.
Oppressive conduct outlined in Texas versus Johnson, and courts that have reviewed the issue have generally concluded that it is protected speech. In the 2006 case of Corey versus Nason, the U.S. District Court in the Western District of Pennsylvania, which is in the same federal circuit as New Jersey, concluded that, quote, the weight of federal authority establishes that directing the middle finger at a police officer is protected expression under the First Amendment, absent some particularized showing that the gesture in the specific factual context constitutes fighting words or is otherwise illegal. According to Section 2C 33-2, quote, a person is guilty of a petty disorderly persons offense if, in a public place, and with purpose to offend the sensibilities of a hearer, or in reckless disregard of the probability of so doing, he addresses unreasonably loud and offensively coarse or abusive language, given the circumstances of the person present, and...
Right there, in the middle of a public interaction with a minor screaming for aid, the recording goes dark. The law in New Jersey is clear. The camera stays on until the encounter is fully concluded. But the officer intentionally created a dead zone, a black hole of accountability, where we are just supposed to trust that everything was handled gently. We aren't naive, you and I. We know what happens when the camera light goes off. And we know it is a deliberate act of covering up the ritualistic humiliation of a citizen who dared to talk back. When backup arrives and the camera flickers back to life, you hear the other officer, Patrolman Lomentang, twisting the knife deeper, telling the boy he legally has to identify himself because he was detained for causing a public disturbance by cursing. But here is the justice that silences the liars. New Jersey is not a stop and identify
2022
state.
case of Morales versus Maxwell, the U.S. District Court for the District of New Jersey held that an individual could not be convicted of disorderly conduct under this statute for shouting profanities at a police officer because, quote, under long-standing precedent, the statute violates the First Amendment when applied to language short of that which would incite the hearer to immediate violence. And the profanities he shouted at the officer, quote, by themselves do not constitute fighting words that would provide probable cause for arrest under the disorderly person statute. Given this precedent, it is highly likely that a court reviewing this situation would determine that Mr. Walker's use of the middle finger was protected speech, and that he could not be arrested under the disorderly conduct statute for directing the gesture at Corporal Pritch.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Please. Whatever. What?
You heard me.
Come here.
I'm afraid of you.
Come here.
The officers kept demanding a name, pushing the lie that the boy's protected speech was a nuisance, while the kid stood his ground, a legend in a hoodie, telling him to check the First Amendment and warning them that their ignorance was going to cost the department a fortune.
Crime.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Why you cursing me?
It's not a crime.
What's your name?
It's not a crime.
What's your name?
Help! Help!
No help.
Help! Help!
Yo,
Help!
Corporal Pritch grabs Mr. Walker and holds him with his hands behind his back. When Mr. Walker starts screaming for help, Corporal Pritch turns off his body-worn camera and does not turn it back on until backup arrives. Under Section 40A 14-118.3 of the New Jersey statutes, every uniformed law enforcement officer is required to wear a body-worn camera that electronically records audio and video while acting in the performance of their official duties, with limited exceptions. Additionally, Section 40A 14-118.5 states that, quote, the video and audio recording functions of a body-worn camera shall be activated whenever the officer is responding to a call for service, or at the initiation of any other law enforcement or investigative encounter between an officer and a member of the public, and that, quote,
In a civil suit. Everything makes sense now when you realize this kid referenced a previous lawsuit against a neighboring department that doesn't even have body cameras, exposing the fact that this isn't his first rodeo with a corrupt system trying to blackball him into silence.
Quote, when a civilian conversing with the officer requests that the device be deactivated where it reasonably appears that the person will not provide information or otherwise cooperate with the officer unless that request is respected, when a person other than an arrestee is seeking emergency medical services for themselves or another person and requests that the device be deactivated, while the officer is participating in a discussion pertaining to criminal investigation strategy and planning, or when specifically authorized to do so by an assistant prosecutor or an assistant or deputy attorney general for good and sufficient cause. These legal requirements are expanded upon in the body-worn camera policy issued by the Office of the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey, and it is clear that Corporal Pritch's actions in turning off the body-worn camera violated both state law and the Attorney General's policy.
I'm under arrest right now because I was cursing at him. And he said,
you're being detained because you're acting strange.
He knows the game. He knows the players. And he knows that the only language these bullies understand is the threat of financial ruin and public exposure.
that's not legal.
It is legal. He's allowed to
Who is
detain
this
you
kid?
until he performs his
So what am I
investigation.
doing though? What am I doing that made him detain me? What legal
Every
right?
time I rode by him twice, he shot me the finger. So I turned around and say, "Well, you're
Is that a crime?
problem?"
Hold
Then
on
he
a
tells
second.
me
That's not a
This is
crime.
causing public disturbance.
And then he
That's
tells
not,
me to
no, that's not a
to
crime.
F off, big.
Yeah, off, big. That's not a crime. That's not a crime. He's looking at you because he's like, what the fuck you want me to do? Because it's not a crime. I know my rights.
Who are you?
I don't have to say any of that.
You do if you're being detained.
For what reason?
What is your
legal
name?
reason am I being detained for?
Where are you coming from and where are you
What
going?
legal reason am I being detained for? I need to know that. Legally, I need to know that.
Patrol.
The officers, confused and outmaneuvered, finally release him because they have absolutely nothing. And as he walks away, he shouts an expletive that is, once again, fully protected by the Constitution they swore to uphold, but clearly never read.
Michael James Lamontagne arrives on the scene and informs Mr. Walker that he is required to identify himself because he is being detained, even though he cannot provide a legal justification for the detention. However, New Jersey does not have a stop and identify statute that specifically requires Mr. Walker to identify himself, and courts have determined that New Jersey's obstruction statute cannot be applied to individuals who refuse to identify themselves to police officers when they are not suspected of committing a motor vehicle offense. Under Section 2C 29-1 of the New Jersey Code, quote, a person commits an offense if he purposely obstructs, impairs, or perverts the
The breadcrumb that keeps me up at night isn't the anger in the officer's voice. It is the complete calm of the kid who had already seen the darkness behind the badge. A kid who told them he felt unsafe and knew that his knowledge of the Fourth Amendment was the only body armor he had against men who treat the streets like their personal kingdom. We have to ask ourselves, how many kids don't know these rights? How many quiet kids get their arms twisted behind their backs in that dark gap when the camera is mysteriously off? And how many lives are ruined because nobody taught them that the Supreme Court ruled decades ago that the middle finger is not a crime? The system failed Corporal Pritch and Patrolman Lamontagne because it allowed them to roam the streets with badges while being
of law or other governmental function, or prevents or attempts to prevent a public servant from lawfully performing an official function by means of flight, intimidation, force, violence, or physical interference or obstacle, or by means of any independently unlawful act. Although the statute does not require that an individual physically obstruct an officer to be convicted of obstruction, in the 2020 case of Bryant versus Camden County Police Department, the Superior Court of the New Jersey Appellate Division held that an individual, quote, had the right to refuse to turn over his identification when an officer demanded it during a police investigation that was not initiated on the belief that the individual had violated a motor vehicle law, and that he could not be arrested for refusing to identify himself because he, quote, committed no unlawful act to impede the investigation. Therefore, a court would very likely determine that Patrolman Lamontagne was incorrect in his assertion that Mr. Walker was required to identify himself.
Why are you
Shooting me the finger.
Why are you?
Is that illegal?
Why are you
Cursing at
flipping the bird? Yes, it is. When you are cursing in public, you are causing a public disturbance. You're being a nuisance to the public.
In what way? When he was driving past? Well, I'd like to see you guys prove it in court.
It's called causing a public disturbance.
I know the
by
law.
being a nuisance.
I know the law.
I'm not saying you're being charged with anything. At that
I'm
point,
just
he's
figuring out
detaining
what's wrong with you.
to make
What's
sure
going
that there
on?
is nothing
Make
wrong.
sure you're okay.
Make sure that you're okay.
What reason does he need to detain me?
He thought maybe he thought you were signaling him down. Were
I
you
would.
signaling to him?
No.
giving them both a hard F for their conduct and a warning to the audience that these are the men who demand your unquestioning obedience. The young man, Mr. Walker, gets an A- for knowing the law better than the lawmen, but making the mistake of handing over his ID anyway. Yet his fiery refusal to bow down to a fake authority makes him the silenced hero of this modern American tragedy.
No, you knew very well that I wasn't signaling to you, right? I wasn't signaling
Well,
to you.
you bring attention to yourself.
That's not signaling.
You're acting strange. I'm making sure you're okay.
Dude, that's so funny. Like, you're not here for my safety. You're not trying to protect
How
me.
do you know?
You're walking
may
on the
be-
side of the road and you're cursing and you're flipping the bird.
Once at him. I gave him the finger once. That will not hold up.
Do you know him? Do you know him?
It's not your business. I
It is
plead the
my
fifth.
business.
I plead the fifth then.
It's
What's
your
the First
public
Amendment for?
Okay. The First Amendment is for your freedom of speech. Okay.
Okay.
What does that have to do with
Was I
using
making a call to
gestures?
action? Am I calling for an action to be done against you? No.
Do you understand
You're
that it
bringing
is?
attention to
Listen,
yourself to
listen,
get
listen, listen,
That's
listen.
illegal.
It's behavior that's out of the ordinary. Clearly, if you stopped all the way back there, I'm assuming you guys were back there and you just
We
continued
went
to
back
walk.
a bit further
And you
back.
just
and you
continued
ran
to
away
walk.
from me.
I wasn't running, I was walking.
Once he
So
gives an
let's-
order
let's
for you
be
to
honest
stop, you're supposed to stop.
I did stop when he originally said it, but I was asking, is it
And then he
illegal?
told me
Is it
to
a
F
lawful
off
order?
and he took off.
Yeah, because I kept walking because you weren't pursuing at the first. You
All
only
right.
started pursuing because
So
I said "F you pig." That's
listen.
when you got a little upset.
Look, we're here at this point now, okay? You've brought the attention to yourself. You've
Yep.
caused the public alarm.
Well,
What
I'd like
we
to
are
see
doing-
you legally
so
hold
now
that
what we
in
are
court
doing,
because
I'm not charging you with.
Here is the question I am leaving you with, and I want you to sound off in the comments because I read every single one. If a teenager can memorize the Bill of Rights and stand tall against armed agents of the state without flinching, What is our excuse for letting these tyrannical foot soldiers patrol our neighborhoods? And how many of you have a similar story where the camera turned off right when you needed it most?